I'm well aware this is probably not the first review you've seen of the Studio Display, and there's a lot of similar points I could hit on, but the main reason I just want to go ahead and say the Studio Display is amazing and awesome, but the primary issue between XDR, between pricing, between refresh rate, all of this stems down to the monitor being just a tad too late. Let's begin. So what I've realized is the primary reason that I was finding the Studio Display to be a tad lackluster and always left us wanting a little bit more out of Apple's external monitor is because we have now had the expectation in the bar set so high. You know, the last external monitor they made was $6,000 and it had this crazy custom LED backlight, and it wasn't quite mini LED, but it basically allowed for mini LED type specifications. And now, of course, we've gotten mini LED across MacBook Pros and ProMotion to the point now where 120 Hz is standard on iPads and MacBooks that are similar pricing to this monitor. So everyone was kind of hoping and looking forward to there being a monitor to partner with their laptop. But now, of course, this display is not extreme dynamic range and it's not 120 Hz, probably because Thunderbolt 4, which is currently the I/O Apple is shipping with their best Macs, that's not capable of outputting 120 Hz at the 5K resolution. So yeah, it would be great if Apple would settle for 4K at 120 Hz, but after shipping 5K iMacs for this many years, I think everyone kind of knew that wasn't going to happen. But honestly, if this Studio Display would have come out like, I don't know, 6 to 9 months ago, I feel like there would have been substantially less complaints, because the main reason people like me were even hoping for a high refresh rate display was because we had already received that on our new MacBook Pros. And the only reason now that everyone's expecting, hey, how come you can't just make exactly what the Pro Display XDR was for less than half the price, is because, well, now Apple has figured out how to manufacture at scale and with reasonably cost-effective manners mini LED panels in our MacBooks and iPads that have fairly similar specifications to the Pro Display XDR. So if we take a lot of these new technologies that Apple has mainstreamed and made more affordable out of the equation, this would be a godsend. This would be amazing if you consider ever since 2019, the only external monitor Apple made themselves and sold on their website was $5,000 for the panel, $1,000 to make it height adjustable, and another $1,000 to make it nano texture. So I still see the Studio Display as a huge leap in the right direction. No, it's not the perfect price point, and no, it's not really on par with a lot of the specifications we expect in our MacBook Pros now, but the fact that we went from having basically a $6,000 to $7,000 monitor to now under $2,000, I think is a huge leap in the right direction. And no, it's not mini LED, no, it's not extreme dynamic range, but I personally think people are kind of glossing over the fact that this panel, despite not being high dynamic range, is still incredibly good. It gets much brighter than iMac displays did. I know it's only 100 nits, but I definitely notice it. And may I just add, it's insanely difficult these days to find external monitors that don't have chins, that don't have plastic, that don't have asymmetrical bezels, and of course have a glass front that's one single pane across the entire front. Not to mention all of the awesome bells and whistles Apple has to include in their monitors, of course, because they are Apple. Apple is not Dell, Apple is not LG, just trying to make your standard run-of-the-mill external monitor that you're going to partner with any old computer. No, they have to go above and beyond with their build quality, with their manufacturing quality, and the fact now that there's a sub $2,000 monitor that looks as good as this one does, with a symmetrical bezel all the way around, with spatial audio, which can hit insanely low frequencies, which I've been very impressed with, and also now adds center stage, essentially, to any Mac, that's a huge win in my book. And if you care about these bells and whistles, there's basically no better accessory to partner with your MacBook. I mean, think about it for a second. A lot of the biggest issues people would have with using a MacBook is like, well, yeah, it's nice to have something on the go, but when I'm sitting at my desk, I want something, you know, a little bit bigger, and I want those speakers to sound a little bit louder, and I only have 3 Thunderbolt ports to work with on my MacBook Pro, but if you tether it to this thing, suddenly you enable extra USB-C ports to plug all of your accessories into. And it should still be noted how amazingly awesome it is to just have one single Thunderbolt cable coming out of that monitor that plugs into your MacBook, and now, through a single port, your MacBook Pro is getting power, data, it can get an Ethernet signal through there, and other accessories that are typically going to just be stuck at your desk, whether it's a printer, whether it's a microphone or an external camera or whatever you want to plug in regularly. Now you can connect with a single cable instead of having a monstrosity of rat's nest hanging out around your MacBook Pro. That is an amazing feature, especially considering it can handle all of that data while still outputting 96 watts, allowing not only charging but fast charging on your MacBook Pro. That is just an amazing suite of benefits that you can couple with a MacBook. So despite the fact that it's not XDR or 120 Hz, I still have very much enjoyed using it to edit my videos with. I've had a lot of fun doing live streams with Center Stage. I have to admit the firmware has not been great, however, for that webcam, because at first it was like overly compressed and fairly grainy. Then there was an update that came out and seemed to have fixed most of the grain issues, but Center Stage still has kind of a hard time tracking with me, which is why a lot of the time during live streams you'll notice the camera just kind of go off to the side and try to include ghosts in the background for some reason, and it kind of keeps me off to the left or sometimes to the right, or sometimes it pans too high. So hopefully it will get better over time with software updates, but still, I can't think of another monitor out there that would provide as many advantages as this one does. Maybe a close runner-up would be the Pro Display XDR, but even that doesn't include a really solid speaker system or a Center Stage webcam. So all you're really getting with that is, you know, 3 times the price and a higher resolution, higher dynamic range, which may be helpful if you're working in HDR workflows, but I'll be honest, most content is not uploaded at HDR, and the color accuracy and the richness of this panel still should not be scoffed at. And if you're the type of person who uploads your content in standard dynamic range, this honestly works fantastic. And if you're the type of person that cares about 120 Hz, well, getting a 5K panel at that refresh rate doesn't seem to be possible quite yet with this I/O. Maybe Apple's saving that for a Studio Display Pro later in the year, or a refresh to the Pro Display XDR coming in the future, but I can guarantee you Apple will charge more for that hardware, and because no other monitor on the market can necessarily match these exact specifications, they can justify it and say this isn't really overpriced. But I just want to remind everyone that when the first 5K iMac came out, way back in the mid-2010s, everyone was saying, why can't you just sell the 5K panel on itself? Why do we have to buy this whole computer with the big chin and the big fat bezels? A lot of people just wanted that as a monitor, and because target display mode didn't work with a resolution that high, a lot of people were left just buying those ugly LG Ultrafines or putting up with basic 4K panels with plastic designs and asymmetrical bezels. And for the record, if that kind of thing doesn't bother you and you don't need speakers or a Center Stage camera, or you don't care about the chassis being made of a premium metal or having this kind of height adjustability, yeah, of course, there's way cheaper monitors on Amazon you can get that are fairly high reviewed. They just probably won't look as clean or minimalistic on a desk setup. But for those who do care about those types of things, which are typically Apple's customers, this is less than a third the price of a Pro Display XDR. And honestly, given so many YouTubers out there use Pro Display XDRs and yet don't upload in HDR, I promise you this will basically do the exact same stuff they're using their Pro Display for, except you could buy 3 of these for less money than a Pro Display XDR, especially considering this thing comes with a stand now, thank goodness. The height adjustability is a $400 add-on, by no means cheap, but again, it's a huge step in the right direction because it used to be a $1,000 add-on. Same with frosted glass, an extra $300, okay, not necessarily cheap. I don't know who out there was actually expecting Apple to get into the cheap external monitor business, but the fact that it used to be a $1,000 add-on to get frosted glass, now it's a $300, huge step in the right direction. Yes, it could be better, but again, this is Apple we're talking about here. They're gonna go above and beyond to ensure high build quality and a premium look, as well as just simplicity of setup. The fact that you can just plug this thing into your laptop with a single cable and everything just starts working is awesome, and whether or not this is worth it to you is gonna completely depend on where you put your value in an external monitor. If you're just looking for a decently high resolution and you don't care about the bezels or the chassis, then by all means, it's not worth it. Don't bother with this thing. But if you're going for that clean, minimalistic approach and you like having one product that can replace the job of many and be easy for plug and play with your Mac accessories, absolutely. I've had a delight using this thing, and the only reason I'm not keeping it is because I want to see what Apple has in store later in the year when it comes to Ross Young's rumored refresh to the Pro Display XDR, which he claims will be getting 120 Hz. I don't know how, because Thunderbolt 4 is still not capable of doing that, but either way, I'm not in a huge rush to get an external monitor, so I'm comfortable with waiting a little bit longer. But for the record, if they somehow crammed a 4K or 120 hertz panel on this thing, I would absolutely be keeping it. And if I couldn't tell the difference between 120 hertz and 60, then this would be a great buy in my book, and I would love to keep using it. But unfortunately, the Studio Display was just a little too late. You know, if this would have launched a year ago, I think everyone would have loved it. But now we've been spoiled with our new MacBooks and their high refresh rates and their XDR. So we're kind of expecting that to be continued whenever we use an external monitor. And if you're curious if I do notice that kind of thing on a daily basis, yes, especially because I use my MacBook Pro directly with the Studio Display. And that's one of the reasons I enjoyed getting the height adjustable option, because I can fit my entire 16-inch MacBook Pro panel directly beneath it. So they're just kind of this power couple of displays. But every time I switch between the two, I notice the 120 hertz here and 60 hertz here. It is a bit distracting, and given this is a $2,000 monitor, by no means cheap, I feel like if I'm spending that kind of money, I shouldn't be making any compromises. It should basically be everything I want if I'm spending that kind of money. And while it's not necessarily likely they'll have a 120 hertz monitor later in the year, I at least need to wait and see if it's possible. And if they end up not making one at all, then yeah, this would probably be a decent fallback option. Hopefully there's some more sales later in the year so you can get this thing for a little bit cheaper. I'm definitely gonna miss having such a gorgeous monitor on my desk every single day, but I'm looking forward to what Apple has in store for later. Let me know what you guys think of the Studio Display as well, and what you would like changed or what bugs you the most about it. All that good stuff, let me know what you're thinking down below. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you all in the next one.